You probably are worse than Jeb Bush. You are the single biggest liar.
Donald has this weird pattern. When you point to his own record, he screams, liar, liar, liar.
Well, that's just a taste of the cut and thrust from last night's Republican debate, and we're back now with the panel. George, your reaction to the debate and to a different part of it, which was Donald Trump's apparent search and destroy mission against Jeb Bush and his brother.
Well, you know, the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back didn't break the camel's back. It was the critical mass, the accumulation of straws. And the question is, people said, well, Trump's immune to mere accumulation. The vulgarity and profanity added up. But last night, I think he may have passed the frontier. The man who has supported partial birth abortion and gun control and eminent domain and all the rest, last night adopted the most vicious line of the hard left in this country: Bush lied, people died. No one doubts that Bush was wrong and all the others about the presence of weapons of mass destruction. But to say that Bush lied, and derivatively, Colin Powell lied and everyone else in the administration, will not, I think, go down well in South Carolina, which rescued George W. Bush in 2000 after he lost badly the New Hampshire primary to John McCain. So I think that if there is such a thing as a critical mass, he's approaching it.
You know, David, I was surprised because it seems so gratuitous to go after. I know that George W. Bush, Bush 43, is going to be on the campaign trail tomorrow with his brother, but it seemed odd that he would decide this was the moment to relitigate the Iraq War. Given the fact that he went into that debate, if you believe the polls, with about a 15-point lead, do you think it changed the dynamic of the race and the Republican side?
Well, I do think there's a combination of the vulgarity and the kind of torching of former President Bush. It was Marco Rubio who had the best response, which is the best defense of Bush is that he kept the country safe after 9/11. And there can certainly be a debate about the execution of the war, even the basis of the war in Iraq. No doubt about that. But you got 58,000 veterans in South Carolina. W. Bush, former President Bush, is popular down there. Yeah, so I don't see the wisdom of it. It allows Jeb Bush an opportunity to kind of fight for the establishment. He's going after Trump, I think, in an effective way in that regard. And there's still Cruz, who I think is making a strong ideological case against Trump on temperament, on ideology, on not being a conservative. And with evangelical support down there, I think he's got some game.
Kirsten, as a Republican pollster, can you explain the wisdom of Trump going after George W. Bush the way he did last night?
Donald Trump's appeal is that he will be something completely different. And his appeal is not that he is a good Republican who does good Republican things. His appeal is actually to a lot of voters who may have called themselves Republicans, may be interested in participating in this process, but the options they've been offered in previous years, the difference between, say, a Mitt Romney and a Rick Santorum, just didn't thrill them. So Donald Trump, despite the fact that he's doing things that any other candidate, they would be written off, counted out of this race, because you have a section of people who call themselves Republicans, but they don't like the Republican Party, that is who Donald Trump is appealing to. And that's why in poll after poll, he actually doesn't do particularly well among very conservative voters. He does well among those who are more somewhat conservative, who are moderate, those who are less attached to the partisanship and the ideology, and who have a more emotional attachment to just wanting to see someone blow up the system.
All right, Kristen, let's turn to the Democrats. After Bernie Sanders' landslide, and that's the only thing you can call it, in New Hampshire, do we need to stop thinking of him as a potential spoiler who's going to make things difficult for Hillary Clinton and push her further to the left? And do we need to start thinking of him as a potential Democratic nominee?
The trouble Bernie Sanders will have is that he is not able to put together the full Obama coalition. This is not an exact repeat of 2008 because Bernie Sanders does not have the same level of strength with the African American community, with the Latino community, in the way that Barack Obama did. That said, he's got such strength among young Democratic voters that you have to believe Hillary Clinton is wondering if this is going to hurt her at all in a general election, if this generation of millennial voters who has fallen in love with Bernie Sanders, they are feeling the burn, so to speak, do they just decide that she is so inauthentic and does not represent their generation, and they just decide to stay home in November if she's the Democrats' nominee?
Juan, what does Sanders' strength, and whether he ends up getting the nomination or not, what does it say about the state of the Democratic Party at this point, and what do you think it says about Hillary Clinton's strengths and weaknesses as a candidate?
Well, let's start with Hillary Clinton. I think it's pretty clear that she's not an inspiring candidate. She doesn't inspire people out on the trail, and people see her experience, her connection with not only the Clinton administration, but even the State Department, the Secretary of State, not as a plus in many cases, but as evidence that she's part of the establishment in an era when, or an election cycle, when people want populism and they want authenticity. They don't see it coming from Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton is running on the basis of her experience and the fact that she can win, that she doesn't think Bernie can win. But, you know, Bernie may excite you, he may thrill you right now, young America, but if you are worried about the Republicans who are highly energized, and you're worried about the Republicans controlling the White House, the Senate, and the House, then you've got to look at me because I can win this race. That's Hillary Clinton's case. And so when it comes to the Democratic Party, to answer your first question, Chris, then the Democratic Party, which is totally aligned with Hillary Clinton, I mean, everybody, Congressional Black Caucus, to Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the like.
All the superdelegates.
And she's got the superdelegates, so let's not forget that as we think about who's actually going to win this thing. You come back to the idea that the Democratic Party risks the problems of the Republican Party, which is losing touch with the base.
Well, and I wanted to pick up on that with you, George. It becomes clear as this goes on that both races, both on the Republican side and the Democratic side, are going to continue for a while, probably well into March, maybe even into April. Who's running more of a risk? The Republicans, who seem to be getting pushed further and further to the right in this debate, or the Democrats, who clearly, with Sanders' strength, are being pushed further and further to the left?
They're both in jeopardy. Bernie Sanders' message is, after more than 7 years of a Democratic presidency, America is a nightmare of increasing inequality and rampant injustice. That's a hard sell, it seems to me, even for the base. On the Republican side, we know that if the Republican nominee gets the Mitt Romney's portion of the non-white electorate, it's about 17%, he will need to get 65% of the white electorate, which no one has done since Ronald Reagan in 1984, carrying 49 states. And it's going to make it very difficult after this vitriolic rhetoric about immigration to do that.
20 seconds, David, final thought.
I think Hillary Clinton is starting to do a better job against Sanders. I thought she was better in the debate. She's making him out to be a one-issue candidate. More people are paying attention to what his policies would do to the Democratic Party and to the country as a whole economically. I think there's more danger for the right at the moment.
All right, but New Hampshire was a big loss for her.
No doubt.
Thank you, panel. See you next Sunday.